Customers in Johannesburg who choose not to pay for electricity will no longer be supported by City Power. Isaac Mangena, who's the spokesperson for the electrical company, estimates that City Power is owed over 10 billion rand in unpaid electricity bills. Well, joining me now to unpack this further is Dr. Trevor Ngwane, who is with the Soweto Crisis Committee. Dr. Ngwane, thank you so much for your time and thank you for joining us on the Weekend Report this morning. Your response to City Power is saying that they will no longer be responding to outage calls for those who haven't paid their electricity bills.
Thank you very much for having me. Yeah, this is very unfortunate. This is a myopic, biased, one-sided self-serving policy by the authorities. If they are trying to address the current energy crisis in South Africa, they are going about it in the completely wrong manner. And it's going to make matters worse. It won't solve any problems.
Right. Well, City Power is saying that they are inundated with a threefold problem. They're facing pressure from the grid itself. They're facing pressure with regards to load shedding and the load shedding schedule, which is currently, as we know, on stage 6 indefinitely. And then they're also facing the pressure of, very low revenue collection targets. And we know that Soweto, unfortunately, owes quite a substantive debt to Eskom. How should utilities like City Power try to resolve this particular crisis?
Yeah, well, City Power does not cover Soweto because Soweto gets its electricity directly from Eskom, but there are parts like industrial parks, in Soweto where it's responsible. But let me speak on behalf not only of Soweto residents, but also of Johannesburg, indeed of South Africa, because the energy crisis, it's a national phenomenon. So City Power's approach is to shift the burden of the crisis onto residents and not address it and shoulder it also as the government. So this is a type of passing the buck, almost blaming the victim. So I don't think that it's a good policy.
Yeah. The other concern that has been raised is certainly around the fates of small to medium-sized businesses that are operating in these areas where they do suffer power outages. And there is, of course, that struggle with a lot of businesses that haven't been able to keep up with bills because of the effects of load shedding on their profits. What's your response to that? Because it does seem to be a compiling and a compounding problem that isn't getting any better.
Yes, it just so happens that, we conducted some research as the University of Johannesburg in the Midway Industrial Park, and the report will be coming out soon. But there is economic distress there. You find funeral parlors, welding shops, automobile businesses. They are all collapsing. The worst part is that the city of Johannesburg, instead of helping these people in distress, they are now demanding payment for rates and services, which these small businesses simply cannot afford because, load shedding has attacked and crippled their businesses. It's completely unfair. I think the government is doing small business wrong in Johannesburg.
Yeah. We also know that City Power had a deadline, in fact, that they issued to a lot of residents, particularly in the Naturena area with outstanding bills. I believe that yesterday, the 12th of May, was the deadline for residents, for businesses to have, successfully, essentially, paid up all their outstanding bills. That turnaround time is next to impossible, really, to expect people to pay up bills that have been outstanding for that long. Do you get the sense that City Power is not really interested in going to the table with a lot of these residents to find out what the problem is and how they can work together, collaborate on how to solve this problem?
There's a saying that those the gods want to destroy, they first make them mad. So this is complete madness. As you know very well that the local government in South Africa is in crisis. Their finances are in a complete mess. They are a shambles. Most local government, including Johannesburg, can't collect money, can't handle it properly, can't spend it responsibly. It's rife with corruption, incompetence, and unaccountability. This is according to the Auditor General. Johannesburg and many other metros, they keep on increasing the price of electricity and water because they rely on selling services in order to balance their books. This is an unhealthy and unsustainable way to get funding for local government. The national government gives only 10% of the national budget to local government. So the problems don't lie with the residents. It lies with governance, with poor government policies, with myopic policies of the ANC government, which is putting pressure on local government and actually demanding that local government puts additional pressure on already suffering residents. It's unfair, it's biased, it won't work.
Well, your committee, Dr. Ngwane, has previously supported calls for a complete scrapping of the outstanding debt that is owed to Eskom by Soweto residents, upwards of 5 billion rands. Do you still support that position, especially in the fallout of this recent court ruling by the Pretoria High Court, essentially saying that, Eskom government needs to exempt public institutions from load shedding, and government responding by saying they simply cannot afford to exempt all of these areas. And so the scrapping of the debt, do you think that's still a viable solution?
Yeah, I think so. I think the court showed clearly that the responsibility of addressing and solving the energy crisis lies with the government. The government must take its responsibility. It cannot allow hospitals, police stations, schools, essential services to go down because it cannot address the energy crisis. So I think it is the same with poor, struggling, working class people, with people who are living under the burden, of being poor under apartheid, poor in the New South Africa. Governments, the ANC, Eskom, City Power must address the needs of the people. It must put people first, Bachupili. It must not add to their problems. It must help them to solve their problems.
Indeed, and the points that you're raising are important, Trevor Ngwane, but City Power also has its own duties and obligations that it needs to uphold. It is a business operating, essentially, operating at a cost because of the non-payment of these bills. How do you propose City Power solve its problem? What solutions are you able to bring to the table?
Electricity, water, healthcare should not be handled as a business. These are public goods. At the moment, Johannesburg puts a markup of between 72% and 100% on electricity and water. Over the past 20 years, the increase, increments every year, tariff increases have reached 1,000%. Under the prevailing economic conditions, unemployment, post-COVID situation, residents simply cannot afford these monies. The worst part is that the city of Johannesburg, like other municipalities, they receive a certain portion of money from government which they must use to subsidize services to the poorest of the poor. They don't use that money to do that. They use it for other things, including increments for councillors and their officials. So they are the people to blame, not residents. They are doing wrong. They're not doing what they're supposed to do. They're actually helping in attacking, the deteriorating living standards of ordinary people.
All right, so there are no solutions essentially to this problem.
Well, one solution is that the Treasury of Minister of Finance, Trevor Ngwane, must stop putting pressure on municipalities, to attack residents because they are saying you must cut off. They must increase the allocation, of money from national to local. They must make sure that these mayors Stop playing merry-go-round there, dance of change musical chairs. Today is this one, next day is that one. They must make sure that the money given out is spent not in corruption, but to provide services. I think it's very important to note that the ANC government has completely failed to run not only local government, but the whole of South Africa. And I think its hour is coming in 2024, where voters must put it to the sword.
All right, Dr. Ngwane, thank you so much for your time and for coming onto the program and sharing your insights. That is Dr. Trevor Ngwane, who is with the Soweto Crisis Committee.